19th of November, and this is also Daily Scrum. Here is Brian, Nick, and me. Well, Brian, let's start with you.
I was looking at refactoring 178. Some comments have just come in. And yesterday I was pretty busy and internet was spotty, so I couldn't do a whole lot. But I'm looking at all this refactoring that needs to be done for 178 right now.
Okay. Any problems?
Yeah, I've been trying to figure out how to get this error. It keeps finding an ambiguous match, and I know that. I want to test both of them, but that's what I'm working on right now. It'll match a CSS ID, but when you tell it to match a class, it seems to only pick the first one or something instead of giving you an enumerable.
Okay, Nick, what about you?
Not much to tell. I've been doing code review on Brian's pull request for OSRA 178, and I think you must be getting tired of this, Brian. I keep coming back to the same issue where the tests that I see are, for me, they're just, I would call them more detailed than they need to be and more low level than they need to be. Especially considering that these are, high-level acceptance tests in Cucumber. Specifically with the sorting of the orphans, as I said, it seems to me that the orphan model tests the initial sort, and then from that point on, the ActiveAdmin gem picks it up and carries out all the sorting that is done when you click on individual column heads. So, like I said, I don't see the need to keep testing the sorting that happens in the view, since the gem is handling it for us. And I think that the test of the initial sort, the hue included in the orphan model and in the orphan model spec, I think that does a sufficient job that we don't need to retest it in the view as well. What else? I got a clarification request from the client about a story that I submitted to them, adding cities to sponsors. I think it's from Raneem. It sounds like she doesn't quite fully understand how the functionality is meant to work, but I'll need to test the story as she described it to me and then get back to her. With that, I also posted to the client last night asking about what's the status of this private GitHub repo, what should we do about it. And Tarek pinged Modusem on it, but other than that, there's been no other action there either. So all the setup that we need to do for the production server, nothing's happening there because we're blocked. And that's it for me.
As I see, we have only 3 stories in the results page which wasn't accepted by the client, and only 1 in progress.
Yeah, so the orphan importer, they're still testing. The story about agent and the association between agent and sponsor, they're testing. There has been no action on that. And the only one is, there was this question about OSRA 206 that I'll try to answer as soon as the Scrum is over.
Okay. Greg?
I need to ask a question regarding filters. They've come back with filter feedback. Give us feedback on what they want for admin users, orphans, and partners. Now, I think partners should be sponsors because the fields that they've filled out for partners seem to be sponsor fields for me. But then the question is, there is no partner information, so do they just need no filters, or is it something that they've missed?
Yeah, I thought that there was at least one model where they said that they don't need any filters at all.
Okay.
Maybe I'm imagining it, but I mean, considering that they only have a handful of partners and that's what they expect in the foreseeable future, I think that's a safe assumption that they don't really need a filter panel.
Cool. That's good. I can base. What I didn't want to do is submit a pull request that removed all the filters from partners and then it get merged in and all hell break loose. So yeah, and I think that's about it. Where in terms of pull requests, the orphan importer refactor that I was doing, I'm really fairly rusty on that because until Motorsum's PR gets merged in, and I think he's still got a bit of work to do on that, hasn't he, Nick?
He does, yeah. I don't know if you happened to see the recording of the Scrum that we had last night.
No, I'm afraid I didn't.
Yeah. So we had Viv came back, and a new person, Robbie Jackson, was there too. To Robbie, we said that since we're in this kind of stage where we're not taking any new stories, there wasn't really anything for him to take on at the moment, and he was okay with that. He's just going to clone the repo and have a look at the code base, etc. But Viv was interested in the story that Motorsum was working on, specifically subtask about the new validations that need to be added to the importer. Okay. So I told her to reach out to him on Slack. I haven't seen any messages, but it's possible she sent him a private one. So maybe that will accelerate the progress on that story.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry.
No, go on. I was just.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask where do you stand on Brian's pull request sorting of orphans? Because I've been leaving comments, but yeah. if you're happy with it, then as soon as mine are addressed or Brian convinces me that they don't need to be, then I can just merge it in.
There's lots of good in there, but I think, and there is more good than bad. Let's make that clear. But there's little things that niggle me. So I would agree with you. I mean, if we need to test to that level, certainly it shouldn't be an integration test. I know Brian sent a comment back about the routes changing when I made a comment about that, but I haven't had a look I haven't had a chance to look at that properly and see what changes that's made. But I feel like, to an extent, to try and reuse views, we're making compromises on other parts of the architecture that I wouldn't necessarily make. Or do you have a different opinion on that?
Well, I kind of feel like we're already kind of, bastardizing the process a bit by, what's the word I'm looking for here? Well, we're piggybacking on the orphan model to create sponsorships for us. So, we're already kind of breaking the barriers between models' responsibilities.
So you think it matters less?
I think it matters less. I mean, I obviously I don't think that, okay, what the hell, everything's out the window now.
No. I would, yeah.
Yeah, but if it's if it's more of a minor issue than a serious one, then considering our approach, maybe this isn't something that we need to get too hung up about. But
Okay. Well, if you get satisfaction on your tests, that's fine then.
yeah, Brian, how do you feel about the comments that I'm leaving for the cucumber tests primarily?
Okay. I will say something about that first before I forget. There was this thing in there. It was like sponsor or it was sponsor eligible for sponsorship and sponsor if sponsor
Yeah, I remember that.
that you said something about, and I changed it. But I was looking at the change I made, and it actually broke it because yeah, what happens is if it didn't find a sponsor, if that's a bad ID, then when it tries to call eligible for sponsorship, you get a can't find method on null class error. So, and the return value, the reason it was like that is because the return value needs to be the sponsor object itself. That's why it said and sponsor at the end, because that and sponsor was effectively the return object, but it was only returning that if other things were set.
Okay, so normally you could have done it the other way around. You could have said if sponsor and sponsor eligible, but since you want to flip them, that's causing problems.
Let me see. I just changed it to be a third way that seems to work. I don't remember what I did. Let me look at it. Now I'm just checking for the success of the assignment. Where it says sponsor equals sponsor find by ID, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
I'm just checking that. And if that failed, then it immediately exits. That way it can say sponsor if sponsor eligible for sponsorship, and it's not going to try to call a method on a nil class.
Right. Okay.
But either one of those two ways has to check that that's not nil before it tries to call that method.
Okay, understood.
My other question was about the procs that are in there as well. With them being procs, it means every time we check, we make that call to active record. Am I making sense?
You are.
So we have 3 or 4 calls to active record when if we just took the value, if we did the call rather than in a proc and saved it in a variable, we've got 1 call to active record.
Yeah, and that's how I would have done it, but I was having issues defining methods. I don't know if you remember, and down in the bottom I actually had to open the singleton method for the whole active admin, effectively for all of active admin. The whole application singleton
Where
method.
was this, Brian?
This was after it says index do class self.
Oh yeah, okay. I remember that.
So that was kind of the workaround for that, and I'm not sure that means that you could call these from different views, but I have a feeling it means you can, or at least if this view has already been called and then you go to another view, those methods should still be available, which ideally shouldn't be the case. I think. I haven't actually checked that, but from what I've seen of what's going on, I think that might happen. I don't know if that's a problem.
And those procs, say we need to keep them in, those procs are purely to work out which index view needs to be rendered, isn't it?
Well, they do a few different things. They change how the view is rendered. They change the breadcrumbs. Uh, they do various things.
Okay.
The reason I had to put them in a proc is because when the active admin registers this class, there is no HTTP request the first time. And that means there's no params. And that means anywhere you try to access params, it's going to fail. That's was the only real way I could figure out how to do that, aside from borrowing bindings, which was even worse.
See, I think for the sake of a bit of, I think we're taking the dryness thing to an extreme where we're, excuse my French, but arsing up our architecture.
So we could undry it, but
Well, I'm not. Before we do that, I just want other people on it really, and whether people feel the same way. There's kind of something niggling at me at the moment, and I've looked through the pull request, and I've made some comments on bits that but behind all this, I kind of, and I don't think it's necessarily an issue with this pull request per se, like an amalgamation of a series of pull requests, and the way active admin works, I think is encouraging us to make some poor choices about how we implement this. I guess is what I'm trying to say, and I think it's going to be difficult to maintain going forward.
I don't disagree with that.
Okay.
But there is a choice. The choice is that we're going to have to add this into orphan, or we're going to have to add orphans into sponsorship. And adding orphans into sponsorship creates all this. It creates a filtering nightmare. The sorting can be worked through, but it's uglier. The filtering is extremely ugly, and it would be a different UI. It would look different on their screen. It's kind of a choice. I mean, we originally did have it the other way around. I do think this way is better, but it does introduce some things that I agree with you about.
Well, I mean, if we're happy with it as a compromise, as a team, you know, and we're making that trade-off consciously rather than sort of unconsciously, then, you know.
It seems to me that we're trying to pick the lesser of the two evils here, which ideally, you know, I hope that ideally I would not want us to do. But you know, I understand from the UI standpoint that this approach is it's basically this is better for the client. From the developer standpoint, from the architecture standpoint, the original approach would be just less of a headache, I suppose. But either way, we're not happy with what we get, right?
Right.
Is it? I mean, how much time and energy do we want to devote to finding a solution that we will actually like, and what kind of limits should we set for ourselves here? Like, is anything on the table if this isn't working well with an active admin? Should we start considering ditching active admin altogether?
Well,
I'm not going to lie, the thought has crossed my mind, except for the altogether part. You could maybe start with a view at a time.
Yeah. I mean, I don't mean that, you know, tomorrow we just yank it out of the gem file. I mean more in the sense that we decide that we're going to migrate away from active admin, and at some point just take it out of the application entirely.
I guess the answer to that is, as always, it depends. If this is the only that ever, the only view we're ever going to have a problem with, then no, we can live with it, or we can work out the best situation. But I think and I'm not sure that we're at the stage yet where we kick active admin into touch. But every time we have this conversation, what's going through my head again and again and again is, if it was just the standard Rails app, we'd have a partial.
Oh, sure, yeah.
And we'd be done.
I mean, we sort of have a partial now, thanks to Brian's efforts, except for it's the most un-Rails partial I think you'll find. It's right there in the file.
And because it's a block, this is why he's hitting problems with methods and refactoring and tidying it up. That whole call isn't a method, so you can't refactor it out per se. It's a block that you're passing to active admin, which causes a lot of these issues, I think.
I think that causes all of these issues.
Yeah. And that's why you've got your if, and I don't know. I'm going round in circles, but I just. Well, I mean, is the pragmatic solution to say, if Brian meets your latest requirements, then merge it in and leave the discussion for a phase one?
I think that's what it's going to have to be, because if we decide to start slowly replacing active admin, that's definitely
top of the list.
It's top of the list, but at the same time, it's not something that we can complete before Friday, for example.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So, the other thing about this, while I agree with almost everything that's been said in the code review, sometimes I feel it's less of a review of the coding style and more of a review of the way we decided to do it.
Yes.
It unfortunately, I agree with you, Brian. It unfortunately ends up being both. And this is definitely not the first PR to suffer from that. I think that Craig alluded to it a while ago, because we don't get to pair program, and a developer works on a story essentially in isolation. Sure, he can ask in a Scrum, but it's generally one person per feature. So when the code review time comes, there are countless times there have been comments about, wait, why are we doing it this way?
If it helps at all, Brian, you're not in that boat on your own. I've been there. Nick's been there.
Yeah.
I know it's frustrating, but I guess the other thing is, we're all learning all the time, and things that we have done at the start of the project, I think if we got now, we would never do that way. And I think that's a blessing and a curse simultaneously.
Yeah. Like, if you're alluding to this issue with cucumber tests, then again, this is definitely not the first time that the discussion has come up about how low level and how all-encompassing these tests really need to be.
Yeah, I didn't answer you about that. I was going to get back to that. So the cucumber test, there were a couple things that you said about them. The one thing, I forgot where it was. Oh, you're talking about testing the sorting or whatnot, and the model test does that? I agree. But when I wrote that, there was no model test. It was all being done in the view.
Okay.
100% correct. Fixed, gone.
Excellent. That's like half of that file.
The other, oh, I don't even have it. I already fixed it. The other thing was with the low level, the pulling the HTML tag thing.
Yeah.
When I wrote that, I had a feeling it probably wasn't the best way to do it, and I should have stopped right then. But I wasn't really sure of another way to test that because there was another link on the page that was identical. It had the same text and went to the same page. So I didn't know how to specify which one.
Hmm.
Well, that's fine. You know, that's what code review's for.
Yeah.
But what do you think of my proposed solution then? Is that instead of testing for this header, you test for the fact that this sponsor panel should be present?
Well, that's what I'm looking at now, but uh, I've got ambiguous match problems I need to get over right now because it doesn't give each panel an ID. It gives them all the same class.
You can put an ID on it manually.
Can you?
Oh yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, then that's the way we're gonna go with this. And
Um, let me try to think of what view does that. If you
I'll
look,
take it.
yeah. Okay, yeah. Here, if you look at the sponsor show view, it has actively sponsored and inactively sponsored orphans, and
What,
those are in two different panels, and each panel has an ID that I assigned by hand.
which view?
The sponsor show view. And the same actually goes for user show view.
Oh, okay. That's fantastic. That solves that problem.
Great.
All right. Well, you should have a PR about 30 minutes, or you should have an update about 30 minutes after this then.
Terrific.
We may have a merge by the end of the day.
That'd
be cool.
That when I see it.
Yeah.
It feels like that, doesn't it?
If 178 gets merged, then I'll be well on the way to being done with 208 because it's really hard to work on 208 because none of the code I need to work on is even there yet.
Yeah.
Well, let's see if we can't get that done.
Yeah. Brian, in that case, I mean, you expect some changes in code review, but generally they're not going to be to the extent like, no, I'll throw this out and rewrite it. So I've in the past, I've branched off of unmerged PRs before and kept going like that. So I assume that the PR is going to get merged more or less in the shape that it's in. So you can always do that. You don't need to base every branch on the original develop.
So what would happen if somebody tried to merge 208 first? Then it would merge 178 behind the scenes?
It would if somebody actually did that, but if you do that, so if you submit 208 as a PR, you can prefix it with WIP work in progress, and in big bold letters somewhere in there stick
Craig,
do not. Yeah, Craig, do not merge.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So that begs the question: if it's not to be merged, then why would a PR be submitted? Isn't that the purpose?
Because we're not pairing very well at the moment. It's like your first glimpse of code review.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
But of course, you're not obligated to submit a.
No, you don't have to. This one should be fairly. It should be a bit of a moot point anyway, because hopefully we're nearly at the stage where this one's going to be merged shortly.
Well, if 178 gets hammered out, 208 will be much, much, much easier.
Cool.
'Cause I'm trying to build a building on foundations that keep moving around.
Yeah. Well, that's what we like to do.
Enjoy the challenge. Okay. Is Pavel still there? I can see. Yeah.
I still here. Yes. Anything else to discuss?
I think we should address the question of what it is that we're doing this week. In terms of, are we still talking about finishing up by the end of the week and go into production?
I can't see that. Can you?
It would be a feat, I have to say. mind you, what's blocking us at the moment, like, well, okay, if Modusum's story needs to be finished before production, then it's a moot point. It's not going to happen. If that refactoring of the importer doesn't have to be done, then I think there is a chance that we can do it. If we're as close to merging 178 as we think that we are, and 208 is, again, same goes for that, then I can work around everything to do with setting up the production server. I already said to the client, since the proprietary code is not in the code base yet, we can just deploy from our master branch, from the public repo for the time being, and migrate to a private repo in the future, and that would clear the way, basically. I can start setting up the server and deploying to it right away.
I think we should stick to the goal to go into production this week, because without going into production, we cannot achieve anything. Yeah.
But then it all hinges, I think, on OSRA 221, this update to the importer. If this is something the client absolutely needs for phase 0, then...
Father.
But it is code review, so it's almost completed, as I understand.
I'm not sure why it's in code review. Oh, okay, yeah. So there is one subtask from it that isn't taken care of. Oh, and then we started that discussion on the new validations.
Yeah.
That were very awkward, and I wanted Modusum to take a look at my ideas about refactoring and extracting the father model, and basically nothing happened after that. So again, we would be introducing technical debt, but one option is to merge it as is with those awkward validations, knowing that they're not going to be there for long anyway. But that is assuming that everything else with that pull request is okay.
Are you talking about the father validations, right? On the
Yep.
So I feel those are awkward. I really do, but not the worst thing I've ever seen.
Well,
I mean, you are able to understand it when you look at it, so that's one big plus going for it. It's just weird the way it's done.
yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. And, even if we don't change the architecture of the app, and even if Orphan stays the way it is and we never introduce the father model, then refactoring these validations can be a chore for the future. As long as they're functional, we can merge them in, but with the awareness that we're introducing a bit of technical debt. So if we do merge that in, then what that leaves is the subtask OSRA 225 and importer validations, which according to JIRA is still in the to-do. So we need to know what's happening with it.
Which number was that, Nick?
225 is a subtask.
So there's not many details included with that.
No. And this is the one that Viv was supposed to contact Modusum about and see if she could get involved.
So, what are our current plan for next 2 days? Finishing this story, merging this one, and
Okay, I'll send a message to Modusum as soon as we're done, asking about the state of all the 221 subtasks and about private repo and GitHub. And I guess we go from there. I don't think we can plan anything concrete without knowing what's happening with 225.
I would agree.
Yeah. But it's just what we can plan. For now, we'll see how it. Okay, then let's call it a day. Thank you, everyone, and see you tomorrow on Scrum or in Slack.
All right.
Take care, guys.
Yeah. Bye, everyone.
Bye.